Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Call of Duty roster mania has picked up and then some. Now we're just going to jump right into this because it all started with this tweet coming in from CDL Scrim Intel, which basically said Optic are in deep discussions when it comes to making a roster move. As it stands, it seems they are pushing to sign Hydra to start instead of Illey, and everyone's reaction, including my own, was okay, this is pretty wild. Maybe there's some merit to this. I mean, given, Illey's injury last year, maybe just with the team not seeing as much success as they would have liked, even when Illey joined in the end of the year, maybe they didn't really see the results that they wanted. And then it was like, okay, well, if Hydra's going to come into this team, we can see how this works. SCUMP goes to the flex. Then you've got Shotzi and Paco to work alongside each other. You have SCUMP at the flex, and you have Dashy as the main AR. This looks like one of the craziest lineups that we've got in the CDL. And then literally an hour later, we get confirmation, not just from players, but in fact from the organization saying that yes, Illey is going to be a free agent coming into this offseason, and so is Dashy. Dashy is officially a restricted free agent. Illey is an unrestricted free agent, which basically means that Illey can sign with whoever he wants on August 22nd. For Dashy, he is still technically under the Optic Texas brand, and if a team wants him, that means they're going to have to come calling to Optic and work out a deal. And instantly, this comes as a massive shock, right? At the very least, while the Illey one was crazy, it at least made a little bit of sense. But now with Dashy, who was an MVP candidate, argued by many to be probably at bare minimum the second, if not third best player in the most recent title. We saw tons of strides from him as a player. At least it seemed like that, right? When we talk about, his ability to step up as a leader, when it came down to just issues previously a part of different organizations, maybe not being a team player, it sounded like all of that noise was that how he improved in that department, looked amazing in this title, and that they were just going to carry on that partnership moving into the next year. And when I saw this tweet, until I saw what Dashy said, I assumed that, okay, maybe this is just a contract restructuring, maybe because of how great that he looked this past season, not just statistically, but also in game. I assumed, okay, well, maybe this is just Optic giving Dashy a little bit more money. Maybe they're working out the contract again. And then we saw the tweet from Dashy that basically says and confirms I'm a restricted free agent. And then at the very end, hit my line if you're interested, basically confirming that, hey, I am open to options and I'm probably going to be available. So if we talk in depth about this, right? Hydra, I believe 100% then comes into this team, right? Not only of Illey, but also Dashy is going to be out of the picture. Hydra comes in, and you could say, well, how does this really make sense? Because now you lost your 2 ARs, and now you technically have 3 SMGs. So if we do have SCUMP, Shotzi, and Hydra, they move in together at least as a guaranteed 3. In my eyes, that means that SCUMP would switch to the flex. For those that don't know, earlier on in SCUMP's career, before he became the greatest SMG player of all time, ran the role for a decade, he started off his career roaming around with the AR, whether it was in MW2, where obviously the ACR was the go-to gun, if it was in Black Ops 1, where basically everybody ran an AR and it was all about the FAMAS, or at MW3, where he considers it to be his best personal title ever, he also exclusively, for the most part, ran an AR in that game as well. And there's been talk about how he could eventually, get back to that point. He could, maybe run the AR moving into the later stages of his career. And now with these moves being clear, 2 of the ARs now out of the picture, it's never been more prominent to where it seems like SCUMP could be transitioning into that flex role, now headed into MW2. And with recent players like Attach seeing a lot of success in this particular role, traditionally and considered one of the greater SMGs that we've seen in COD history, he sees a lot of success for the Minnesota Rocker. Once he starts to have that AR in his hands, maybe SCUMP starts to see that. Maybe he's watched a lot of players, and I'm sure he has watched a lot of players throughout Call of Duty history who have been great SMG players who have translated into AR roles. It's happened many times, and maybe this is SCUMP saying, hey, in my last few years, I'm going to run this role, or maybe in my last season, this is the way that I'm going to go out. So I guess really the only way to go from here is we ask the question, well, who looks like the Optic fourth, right? Who looks like the final piece to this Optic Texas puzzle, because again, to me, it seemed like no question about it, it was going to be Dashy as the fourth for this team, alongside Hydra coming in and replacing Illey. But it feels like a lot of the rumors could be attached to somebody, I don't know, maybe like Skies, because again, during the offseason, whenever it seemed like Hydra was being given the keys to the New York Subliner franchise, his first option, at least from the rumors, was that he was going to have Skies with him. So it was the Skies and Hydra partnership. They were going to start this new thing, you know, when it came down to the new era of the New York Subliners. So maybe, given the roles, given the, you know, positions, Skies can run that main AR. There's no doubt about that. He could slide into this position. Now, another player that I can also see, you know, being added to this team is somebody like Attach, right? We just talked about him earlier on in the video. Like we said, he saw a lot of success in that flex role last year. I know that he talked about it, you know, throughout the season. He definitely prefers to be a flex over a main AR. Maybe there is potential for him to be added onto this team. I mean, I think a lot of people have been waiting throughout his career to finally join Optic Texas. Maybe this could be the time. And maybe after just a half of a season, or technically what would be 3/4 of a year running that AR, maybe he could be the main AR for Optic now moving into MW2. And I would say the last player, I mean, you could throw a lot of names out there. I mean, you could even get as wild as throwing out Clay and Crim6 if you'd like, which I think could be options. I mean, it feels like at this point, anybody could really be listed up there. But one serious take that you could also have is Cammy, right? A restricted free agent currently for the Toronto Ultra. To close out Cold War, he was considered one of the best players in the game and headed into Vanguard before we did see the official partnership between Optic and Envy in that merger, of which 2 players came from the Dallas Empire, 2 players came from Optic Chicago. It was discussed about how Cammy could maybe be going to Optic. It sounded like there was a lot of rumors around that, and maybe, despite not having a phenomenal year in Vanguard, Optic Texas continues with that same notion. Maybe some of the players still feel that same way, saying, hey, we want to bring in Cammy. We want to have the opportunity to get this roster the way that we planned on coming into Vanguard. Now we've got the opportunity to have it here. And to help strengthen that claim, you also do have, you know, articles coming out from Crone, aka Intel Call of Duty, on breakingpoint.gg. I'll have this linked in the description, of sources basically talking about how, hey, not just Hydra, but the front runner for this position, this main AR role, could in fact be Cammy. It seems like he is going to be at the top of their wish list. It was discussed about how Attach as well is another obvious option for the franchise. But if this article is in fact true and holds up to the standards that at least I expected to, that also confirms that Cammy could be the top of the list for Optic Texas right now. And it felt like, despite the close out the season, there were a lot of teams who held Cammy in high regard. One of the more criticized moves so far of this season has been the fact that Toronto Ultra did allow not just for Bance to walk, but for Cammy to be taken out of this lineup too. It's a hard one to call, but I feel like those players are probably going to be the front runners when we talk about rumors as of this time. Again, you can really throw in a lot of players as of this moment, but it is an interesting conversation to have. It sounds like Hydra is going to be a lock at some point in the near future. As we said, contracts cannot be signed until August 22nd. So it sounds like Optic Hydra very well could be a thing, but there is no doubt about it, right? Optic Texas are clearly making moves, and now really the rest of the CDL, every other franchise now has decisions to make, because if Hydra is now going to be on Optic Texas, that totally changes up the plans for NYSL, because it sounded like they were basically giving Hydra the keys. They were ready for him to go ahead and form his roster. If that's no longer happening, what does New York do? Now with Dashy and Illey in the market, Dashy still being restricted, but Illey being totally out there, what happens now? Like, those players instantly go up the top of the list. If you have an AR player, if you have a flex, do you want to try to bring these players in? Of course you do. And so this is going to create a huge ripple across the entirety of the CDL. We are going to see players and franchises make room for Dashy and probably for Illey too. And then from there, you're going to see teams make decisions, start, in their opinion, to upgrade to get to that point where they can hold the forces of players like Dashy and players like Illey, and maybe even some players who I guess were starting to come together on what could have been a new Subliners team. And I will leave you with this. Storylines are going to be incredible. This is going to be wild. This is going to be absolutely chaotic, along with potentially Hydra joining Optic Texas, along with, you know, whoever the fourth is going to be of this Optic team. it now is going to open up a ton of different stories and incredible situations to follow heading into this title. There was a lot of people who were worried about this offseason maybe being a little bit boring, you know, just with the top 4 teams probably sticking together, with Optic Texas, you know, making a move potentially, you know, outside of that, that was probably going to be, you know, all that there is. But now with these moves being made, everything, and I mean everything, is thrown out the window. And so I highly recommend, if you have not done so already, to like this video and to subscribe for future updates. I have made 4 videos today that have not been used, and I'm hoping that this one will have the opportunity to be uploaded on the channel. So I would greatly appreciate it if you guys did sub to the channel, if you did like this video, because I'm going to be providing all kinds of content during this off season. We're going to be doing constant uploads, constant updates on anything and everything going down when it comes into Roster Mania. So I appreciate you guys for watching this video. More updates to come, and I'll see you back here on the channel very soon.